everyone is able to see the screen now?
Yes, we are able to see your screen.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot, Bhaskar. I mean, I spoke at JS Friends Conf last year, right? So that was my first talk anyways. And now after a year, I'm back. Hey everyone, just to introduce myself, my name is Santosh Yadav and I am one of the Google developer expert for Angular. I also write for a publication called indep.dev, which is one of the biggest publication for Angular, and we try to write most of the in-depth topics. And I am also a mentor at one of the at tech company here in India called .NET Tricks. Here in this session, we are going to have most of the hands-on thing. So we'll be actually starting with what is dependency injection, and then how to use dependency injection in Angular. Then we will see what are the different ways you can play around or play with the dependency injection in Angular. And as I said, right, so most of the things will be hands-on, little bit theory, of course, which is required. And yeah, that's it. In case you have any questions, you can always reach out to me on my Twitter handle. So my details are available here on screen. So you can either you can just go to Google and say Santosh Yadav Dev, santoshayadav.dev, which is my portfolio, and get most of the links which are available. I'll be happy to connect with everyone. And yep, so let's go ahead and get started. And in case you have any questions, feel free to ask here as well. So yeah. So about dependency injection, I'm coming from a .NET background. So I worked like for 8 years. I worked into .NET, and when I plan to switch back to switch to Angular, dependency injection as a term was nothing new to me. But I have seen a lot of developers who actually come to TypeScript or Angular, and they learn about dependency injection coming from JavaScript background. They are a little bit lost. But yes, I mean, of course, if you're coming from a background of like Java or .NET, you might have heard about dependency injection. So one thing which I thought, like after going away from .NET, that maybe I don't have to work with design patterns anymore, right? So if you're not aware, dependency injection is like one of the design pattern which we have. So where we actually don't create any instance of the class. What we mean by that, we will see that see it in action in a few seconds. But just to let you know that it's a design pattern which is available. And when I saw this, I was like, okay, so I cannot run away from design patterns. So design patterns are everywhere. Go to any programming language and you will get the design pattern available there. So what you do in dependency injection, right? So you inject everything. So what you mean by you inject everything? So let's first see actually what's dependency injection, and then what we mean by injecting things. So here I have created a new project using Angular CLI. So it's a fresh project. I have not added anything. So just use the Angular CLI to create a new project. And here you can create a service inside Angular using CLI itself. So I can just go ahead and say npm run. I'm using npm run just because I have NVM installed and I cannot use global packages somehow. So I'm using, otherwise, if you don't have NVM installed on your machine, you can just directly run ng. And then I'll say generate, which is G, and S, which is service. So I can either write generate as a whole term and service as a whole term, but otherwise I can just use shortcuts. And I will just create a service called shared. So this command will actually create a new service, an Angular service. So let's see what's that. Okay, so if I open this particular file, you will see, okay, there is a class. Okay, and we are calling this class as a service because it has something known as @injectable, which is known as decorators. So we call this as a decorators, which are, I mean, I'm sure if you have .NET, if you have a prior experience with .NET or Java, you might have used decorator pattern, or you might have used attributes. So they are similar. Here @injectable is actually adding some functionality to this class. So you can see, okay, this is a class if I talk about it. If I have to use this particular class anywhere, or if I call it as a service, if I have to use this particular service anywhere, which in this case will be a component, of course. So what if DI as a concept does not exist? How I will be doing it? So here I'll just create a constructor and I'll just leave it empty. And let's say I'll add a method here in shared service. I'll say this is okay, add method, just for example, right? So I'll say, okay, this is number 1, which is type of number, and we have a number 2, which is again type of number, and it returns a number. So I'll say, okay, this is new method, and it will return num1 plus num2. Okay, so it adds 2 numbers. Now, if I have to use this, let's see, without DI, without dependency injection. So I would be doing something like this. So I have to create an instance. So I'll say, okay, this is shared service is equals to new shared service. Sorry, I have to import the class. So I have to import from / shared service. And then I will get shared service from here. And okay, so this is how I will be creating an instance. And it looks fine, right now there is no issues. I can actually go ahead and create an instance whenever I want, but there are multiple issues using this concept, right? So let's say tomorrow I have this shared service, and it depends on another service. For example, Angular has something known as HTTP service. So let's say in future, now it depends upon HTTP client service which exists in Angular, and as soon as I save this code will break. The reason being, of course, now we are not able to actually resolve the dependencies which is available inside shared service. So I have to always pass HTTP here, right? So I have to create an instance of HTTP which is used here, and then I have to pass it. And it's a single component. I can have like many more components like this, and then shared service can be used across multiple components as well. So it's an overhead. If I change the signature of my service, everything will break. And to avoid this, we have this concept of dependency injection, where we don't create instance manually. So this is the concept that you should never create instance directly. This is something which we do in .NET, but in .NET you have to do some configuration. If you have used .NET or Java, so you have to do some configuration. But in Angular, actually dependency injection as a concept is built in. So you don't have to do anything. You don't have to actually configure anything. You can just start using it. So to start using it, I can go ahead and inject it using constructor injection. And again, this term is something which is coming from the object-oriented programming languages like Java or .NET, where there are two types of injection. I think there is a property injection and there is a constructor injection. So here we always use constructor injection. And then here I'll say, okay, this is shared service, and which is type of shared service. Now you can see I have not passed the second parameter, right? So but still there is no error. I mean, now it's up to the Angular framework to resolve all the dependencies which are used inside shared service. So this is what we mean by dependency injection, that we won't be creating any instance directly. We will always inject, and this is what we mean by inject. So we'll always go ahead and inside constructor, we will always go ahead and say, okay, this is the object which I need to create, and give me the instance, and then I can go ahead and use it. So here, let's add a button and then call this particular code. So I'll just add button, and on click, I'll just call the add function which we had. So I'll say add number. This function is not available right now, but I will just create it soon. And this is add number. Let's go to my component, and here I'll just say this is add number, and here I'll call my method this dot shared service dot add, and I can pass two parameters, and then let's do just console.log right now, so we can see the output in console. And let's run the application. So I can say npm run start, or I can just simply say npm start, which will start our application on localhost 4200. So this is basic. I mean, of course, but there is more. I mean, there is more to dependency injection, which is available inside Angular. We can do a lot of things. So here we will be talking about the multiple types of services which we have. One is class based. So the service which we created right now using ngg and serve as command is actually a class based service. So, and there are other types of services which is known as value providers and factory providers. They are called non-class based providers. So we'll also see see this two as well if you have more time. And as I said, right, so most of the things which we are going to do will be hands-on session and will be like more of a code. So now it is compiled. So let's open the application. So let's say, okay, this is localhost 4200, and let me just zoom in, and let's open the dev tools, and I'll open it here. Let's open the console log, and if I click on add numbers, you can see the two numbers are getting added, and we have the output as 10. So this is just simple this is simple class based providers which we have used. Now once we use classes, once you use the services, this is very important. So we have something known as provided in, and by default it is available as root. This particular thing is available after Angular 6. So in case you are using Angular 4 or 5, you may not see this particular syntax, and if you try to use it, you won't be able to do it because of course it's not available in Angular 4 or 5. It's available only after Angular 6 and above. So what's the advantage of this particular provided in property? So there are multiple values which it can take. So we have something known as root, we have any, we have platform, and then we can also pass component or module. So let's see them one by one. So what I will do to actually showcase these values or what these values do, I'll create few more modules inside our application. So let's go ahead and do that. So to create Angular modules inside Angular, and I will also configure routing. So routing to navigate from one URL to another URL, because they are going to play an important role when we play with these values. So I'll create few modules. I'll say, okay, npm run ngg, and now I have to create a module. So I'll say m, which is short for module, and then I will give the name of the module. So I'll say, okay, this is employee, which is name of my module, and then I'll pass some flag. So there is some first flag which is routing. So routing is something which will have all the routing configuration for employee module, and then I'll pass a flag called route. This route property takes string value. So I'll say, okay, this is employee. So it is going to configure a friendly URL called employee for us. So when I navigate to localhost 4200/employee, I'll be able to see a new component which is available inside employee. And finally, I'll pass last property, which is -- module, and I can pass it as equals to app. App is basically where I want to register this particular route. So I want to register this route inside app. So that's why I mentioned app. So you can see there is a route which is already configured here by using this command. And then we also have this employee folder where we have employee module, employee component, and of course they are empty, right? So they don't have anything. Just they have this something called employee works. That's it. And then similarly, I will create one more, and in this case, I'll just call it as department. So we have two, which is called employee and department. And here I'll change this to department. Okay, so now we have two routes available, and to make our routes work, we also need to have a router outlet. So I'll just put a router outlet here on app component, and then I'll use two anchor tags. So I'll say, okay, this is anchor tag, and then we have router link property equals to I can just remove it because anyways I can just directly say this is employee. So when I click on this, I should get employee works, and Another one is department. So I'll say, okay, when I click on this one, show me the department component. And let's change this to department. Okay, let's see if our application is compiled. Yes, it is compiled. Okay, so click on employee. So it says employee works, and click on department. It says department works. We also did one more thing, which I have not mentioned. I think we have also lazy loaded this particular, both the components. So employee and department are actually two separate chunks, which is available for us. And to show this, I'll just go to network tab and let's see this. So when you can see this department, when I click on, let's clear it. Let's click on employee. So you can see employee, when I click on employee, separate JS file is getting downloaded. Similarly, if I just refresh it again and remove and click on department, you can see department as a separate module is loaded. You can also see this functionality using the sources tab. So if I go to webpack.src app, you can see employee folder is not available here, but department is, because right now department is loaded. And if I click on employee, now employee will be loaded. So in case you are working with Angular and you want to verify if your lazy loaded modules are working fine or not, you can just verify this by using this technique or by using network tab. Generally, the common issue which a lot of people do is they might be sharing some services from employee, because the concept of lazy loaded module is like you should not share anything outside of its own module. I mean, of course, this is not related to lazy loading, but I just wanted to let you know. Okay, cool. So now we have this employee and department, and I will go ahead and just inject this shared service in all three components. So we have app component, we have department, we have employee. So here, I'll say this is private, and this is shared service. We are going to see how, based on different values of provided in, how your services behave. So here I'll say, okay, this is yes, shared service. Here also I'll go to employee component .ts. I'll say, okay, this is shared service. So we have this shared service available at all the places. And in this shared service, I'll just go ahead and add into constructor a console log. And I will mention new instance is created. Of course, there are few more ways, but I'll just use the easiest one so I can show all the demos to you. Okay, so let's see what provided in root does. So let's go to console. So you can see, okay, there is a console.log message which says new instance is created. If I go to employee, you can see there is no new instance which is created. If I go to department, you can see still there is no new instance which is created. So provided in root, what it does is it will create a single instance for your entire application. So it's like, in case you are coming from .NET or Java background, it's like a singleton service. So it's a single instance which is available for everyone. So in case you want to share something or share some data across your application, you will always create a service and you will have provided in root. Remember that. So provided in root, it will create a single instance, useful in case you want to share the data across the application. So this is root. Now let's go ahead and see the next property, which is any. So how root and any differs. So I'll just change this to any. And now let's go to the console. So you can see a new instance is created here. Now department component is loaded. So another instance is created for department. Let's click on employee. Again, a new instance is created. But there is a catch. You might be wondering that by using any, it will create a new instance for every module, but it's not like that. So to showcase that, I'll create another component, but I will not lazy load it. So I'll create, let's say, a product component. I'll remove this route parameter, so it will not configure it as a lazy loaded module. And I'll say this is product. Okay, so a new module called product, and then we have product routing module and product module.ts, and it is also registered here, product module. I'll create a new component here inside inside the product folder. So I'll say this is npm run ng gc. Okay, so it will create a new component called product inside product folder. So okay, and it is also registered. Now let's go ahead and use the shared service here as well as we did for others. Private shared service, which is type of shared service. Okay, now if any creates a new instance for every module, we should get sorry, I have to add it inside our routing module. So I'll just do it here. Okay, not here, here. Okay, so I'll just configure a route here. So I'll say, okay, this is our path, and which is product, and on click of when I navigate to localhost 4200/product, I should get product component. Okay, so this route is configured now. I'll just add it inside our app component.html, another router link. Product. Okay. Okay, so now let's see how many instances which we have. So a new instance is created here, and employee is loaded. So a new instance is created for employee. Let's go to department. A new instance is created for department. Let's go to product. You can see now there is no new instance which is created for product. So the way any works is a little bit different. So the way any works is it will create a single instance for all the eagerly loaded module. Here, what you mean by eagerly loaded module? So all the modules which is actually available here inside app module.ts is eagerly loaded module. So they will not be loaded on demand. And here, whatever modules which are actually loaded via configuration using load children, they are lazy loaded module. So with any, every lazy loaded module will have its own instance, and all the eager loaded module will share a common instance. Why this was introduced? There was a reason. So if you see the behavior of this particular lazy loaded modules, right? So what happens when I click on employee, at this point of time, the employee module is getting downloaded. So the thing is, even if I'm using some services in employee module, I should expect that those services will be initiated at that moment, which was totally wrong at in earlier design, right? So just to fix it, so what Angular team did is they don't want to introduce any breaking changes. So they came up with this idea. They said, okay, we can have more values in provided in. So they said, okay, you can go ahead and use any in case you need a new instance for your lazy loaded modules. So this is how provided in any came in. Earlier solutions to the same thing was actually in case you have already used Angular, you might have noticed there are few services which use for root and for any. They just use it because the different components actually will share the same instance if they don't do that. But using any, you can actually avoid it. So that's what your provided in any does. It will create a separate instance for all lazy loaded modules and single instance for all the eagerly loaded modules. The third type which we have is platform, which is I cannot show any examples of this because it is not it is really useful in case you have micro front end application. A platform is something where you can actually share the data between or share the service between multiple applications. So this will be, I think, will be very useful in case once the Webpack 5 Federation module is actually implemented inside Angular. So we can actually use or see the real power of provided in platform. Currently, platform provided in platform is used internally by the router service. So Angular router uses the provided in as platform, because in case you have a hybrid application, for example, AngularJS plus Angular, and you you are still navigating inside the same application. You will not see any differences. Your router module or your router service is actually smart enough to figure out, okay, you are doing everything inside the same window. This is where this provided in platform is already being used. Other ways are, you can actually also say though, okay, this is something shared service which will be available for app component. So I can just mention the component here as well. But this will, right now, this will cause circular dependency, right? Because I'm injecting this inside here. So that's, be careful how you are using it. So I'll just remove it. Okay, cool. So these are few values provided in, and you can also use module name directly here. So rather than giving a string value, you can also pass component name or your module name. So these are few values for provided in. And the next thing which we have to actually see is this example, this diagram. Just don't get scared by what this diagram is. I'll just explain you what it is, because this you need to understand this, because the next concepts which you are going to see is actually closely related to this thing. And this is where I'll show the code again here. So let's go to any product component. So here we have this shared service available here. But the important thing to understand is how this shared service will be available once we run the application. Process, which is known as DI lookup, which happens behind the scenes. What happens is, once you your compiler will see, okay, there is a service which is injected here. The compiler will actually go ahead and see if this particular service is available with this particular component or not. It means, is it registered by this component itself? If not, so the entire this diagram actually shows the same thing. So if it is not available here, for example, this of course this service is not registered by this component itself. We will see how to do that, but that's in future. So the way it will work is, it will go to product component. It will ask product component, do you have this instance? Can you just resolve it for me? Product component will say, okay, look, I don't have anything here. And then it will go to its parent, so which is product module, and it will ask product module, do you have this particular instance? Product module says, no, I don't have. Then it will go to its parent. Now product module's parent is app module. It will come to app module, which is also called as root module. Now this is the name which you can see here, root module. So now it will come here, and once you see a provided in as root or any, all the services are actually, sorry, in case of provided in root, your services are registered at this level, at your root level, app module. Now, in this case, of course, your service will be resolved by this particular module, because it will say, okay, I do have this particular instance available. But let's try to remove this. I'll remove this property. Your build will succeed, of course. But let's see the application. What happens to our application? Okay, so now we have an error, and this was the, I think, most widely searched error in Angular when it was in Angular 4 or 5 version. Angular 6 resolved it, but it was, if you go to Google and search for this no provider error, you will see a lot of blog posts, a lot of answers on Stack Overflow. Thank God, I think after Angular 6, the framework itself has taken care of it. So, okay, so now what is happening is, let's go to the diagram again. So now we came till app module, which is our root module, looking for this particular service, shared service. And now your root module said, no, I don't have this particular error. Now it will go one level up, which is module injector, which is available here. So I can go to main.ts. You can also provide some, there are some internal tokens which can be provided here. But we have not provided anything here as well. There is nothing related to shared service. Now, once it is rejected by this main.ts as well, there is a root level called null injector. So now my service reaches to null injector, and this is the null injector error we get. So it says, okay, I don't have this particular service available at all. Now just go ahead and see what you can do. And it throws the error, right? So this is how entire DI lookup happens behind the scenes. Of course, I mean, it will not cost you much, but in case you have a lot of application, a lot of services, you may have to take care of how your services are getting resolved. And this is where the next concept comes into the picture. So we can also modify the DI lookup. So let's see how. So there are a few decorators which are available. So we have host, we have optional, self, and skip self. So we'll see them one by one. First, let's see self. So I'll just go to product component. Okay. So let's say by using self, you can actually achieve two things. Right now, if you remember this shared service, what we are doing using this shared service is we are actually sharing this common single instance to everyone, right? Apart, if I'm not using any, I'm just talking about root. So I'm sharing the single instance to everyone. But let's say product component needs to have its own instance. Now, what can be the scenario? So just to give you a real-time example, let's say in my previous project, I had a component. So that component was something which was responsible for actually rendering the entire form based on the data which used to come from backend. Now this component I can use at multiple places. If I still use the singleton service, the problem will be I can still have multiple forms, but as soon as I navigate back and forth between those two components, the controls will be added to both the components because I'm sharing the service. And I was smart enough actually to break the application because I was just doing the refactoring. I was migrating my application from Angular 5 to 7, and I tried to be smart as all the developer does, right? So what I did is I said, okay, so let's refactor this application, and somehow I didn't notice that this particular service, because earlier the code was really in bad state, so there was no service. So that's what I did. I migrated or I moved a lot of logic into its own service, but I forgot that this service will be singleton. Now what happened? At one point of time, I could see there are like 10 controls which are coming from my backend, but on my form, I have 300 controls. I was like, what? From where 300 controls are coming? And then I realized, okay, now this is the culprit. So in that scenario, how to handle that? So here you can also use providers property here, and you can pass, okay, shared service here. Now your product component will have its own instance. So now if I go to your application again, and let's see how many instances we have. So of course, employee, there is only single instance. Department, we still have single instance. Product, now we have another instance. So now product component will have its own instance. It means it will actually handle its own state. You can just consider something like that. But of course, where we are using the self decorator. So this is where you can actually stop the smart developer like me from breaking the application. So what you can do is you can actually mention here the self decorator, okay, which is coming, which we have to import from Angular core. So I'll just do it. So it's capital S. That's why it is not coming here. Okay, so I'll just say, okay, this is self decorator, which is coming from Angular core. Now, as soon as I give the self decorator to this particular service, it means this particular component requires its own instance of shared service. Now, let's say I joined your team and I tried to remove this. Okay, as soon as I did that, you can see it says node injector not found shared service. So it is saying, okay, this shared service is not available anywhere because it is saying that it should be provided by its own. So you just stopped me from breaking your application by doing this self decorator. Okay, so this is one of the decorator. Then let's go ahead and see a few more. You also have something called skip self. We'll see skip self and then we'll go up. Now, another scenarios that I know that this particular shared service is not available with me. It should be available with my parent. I don't care about who the parent is, but it's not available with myself. So what I can do is I can just remove myself from this DI lookup tree. So here I can just say use skip self. As soon as I do skip self, I am removed from the DI lookup tree. Now the compiler will actually just go ahead and check with my parent. Do you have this particular service? It says no, I don't have. Now it goes to app module. It says, okay, I do have this particular service available, and it's resolved. So you're just removing yourself from the entire lookup. This is what you mean by skip self. Host is a little bit different. So to do that, what I will do is I will create another component, and here, so I'll say ngc. I'll call this as container. Let's say. Sorry, I have to use npm run. I'll call this as a container component. Cool. So we have this container component, and here I'll use so we have product component. Okay, let's create few more components. So I'll say ngc. I'll call it as, let's say, orders, and I'll create one more, npm run ngc, and let's call it as what? Account. So we have orders and account component, and they are not lazy loaded. They are just component. And here what I will do is I will load app orders. So I'll just load app orders component, and I will also load app account. So these are two components which I'm loading here. And inside orders, I will again go ahead and inject the same service, right? So I'll say, okay, this is private shared service, okay, which is type of shared service. So as we know that, okay, right now the entire shared service is actually uses provided in root. So we will get a single instance for everyone, excluding product, where we explicitly define that it should have its own instance. And now orders is shared service is available here, and I'll go to this container, and I will inject private shared service, which is type of shared service. Okay. So I'll use HTML. What is that? App component.html, and here I'll just use app container. I'll load the app container component basically, which will render other two. Okay, so it says container works. So right now, what is happening is this container component is actually responsible for rendering two other. Okay, where I did that? Okay, I did it wrong place actually, and I'm wondering why we don't have circular dependency here. And it will be account works. Okay, so we should get order works and account works. Yeah. Okay, so right now this container component is actually something which is responsible for rendering two other components, which is account and orders respectively. Now orders uses shared service, which is actually provided by root. But let's say I want to have a separate instance for my container component, and whatever component are rendered inside container component should use the instance which is provided by container component. So here what I can do is I can say this is the host. Okay, so I'm marking it as host, but in this case, as I mark it as host, I have to provide its own instance. So I have to say, okay, this providers, and I'll say this is shared service. So now what will happen is whatever components which are actually loaded inside this container component will use this particular service, which is this particular instance, which is provided by container. Even orders has its own instance. It will not actually look up to its parent. It will not go till app module and it will say, okay, I can use the singleton instance. It won't be like that. Right now the container is host. So it is the host component, or you can say the host for all the components which are loaded inside it. So who will be responsible for providing the services? The container component is. So if you go ahead and see your container component, right now there are two instances which are available. One is of course your global instance, and another one is which is available or created by your container component. So what will happen in this case? Order component, as it is rendered inside container component, will use this particular instance as the service instance. If I use orders outside, it will use the global instance. It will not. So host here, you are restricting that. This is the host component. No one can go above this looking for this particular service. If I have service B, that's absolutely fine. It can go to any other parent, and it can see if it can be resolved or not. But for shared service, it will not go above this. So this is the boundary. So this is what you mean by host. And let's see the last one, which is optional. So optional is pretty useful in case you want to have a service like logger, which is not actually not supposed to be available at runtime, at the build time, prod, in your prod build. So what you can do is you can skip creating an instance of your particular service as well. You can say that, okay, this particular service is optional. So here I'll just create another service. I'll just nggs npm run ngg service, and I'll say this is logger. Okay, so this is the logger service. Now I can go to any component, and here I'll use the optional decorator, and then I'm saying private logger service, which is type of logger service. Okay, so we am here. Let's import. Okay, somehow it's not available, so let's import it manually. Import from dot slash logger service. So once you make it optional, you don't have to actually, you can skip providing this particular service. So let's see how to do that. So you can see right now, of course, logger service is available. My application works. What in case I remove this? Earlier we saw that your application breaks. Now it works, sir. So right. So it's not, your compiler is not bothered about if this particular service is available or not. The only thing which you have to take care of is, for example, let's say I have a log method which does nothing. I'll just do a console.log logger. So in case I'm using this particular log method anywhere here, so I have to always check if I have the instance or not. So I have to check if this dot logger service exists. Then I can say this dot logger service dot log. That's the only thing which you have to do. But of course, you can move your entire logging into a separate service itself, and your application still works. So there is nothing to worry about. But if I remove this and try to call this now, which is this product component. Yeah. So let's go to product component, and it says, okay, cannot read property log of null. And as soon as I put this back, and your application works. So this is how you can actually make it optional by using optional. You can also combine optional and skip self. That's also possible. So it will skip itself, and then it will say, okay, it is optional. So you don't have to worry about this particular service. Okay, so these are different ways to modify your DI lookup tree. And now we'll see, we still have some time. So we'll see a last class provider. These are really useful in case you have an enterprise application. You won't be using it most of the time, but yeah, they're really useful. So we have this, there are three, these are available for class providers. So you have something known as use class, use existing, and let's see how to use it. So let's say I have this shared service, right? So now this particular contains add and let's say another method called subtract number one, which is type of number. Oh, sorry. Comma num2, which is again type of number, and it just returns num 1 minus num2. Okay, so this particular service, which is, let's say this service is really old in your application and it is used at multiple places. Okay, and now there is a new requirement. So your new sprint came in, and now your requirement is we have now, let's say there are new APIs which we need to implement, right? So there are few new screens which are coming, and you have to actually go ahead and use this add method from the new API. Okay, but the subtract should remain same, but in future it can be removed. Now you must be wondering, okay, should we go ahead and rewrite this shared service and create a new one and then add re-implement the add method? But what about subtract, right? Subtract will remain same as of now. It will change in future, but what should we do now? So this is where this use class comes into the picture, or it is really helpful in such cases. So what I can do is I can create, okay, I can just forget about what method needs to be removed or what method needs to be added. Or a lot of people do this, right? So what they do is they create a new method. That's it. So let's create a new method, and then we will start using the new method everywhere apart from the older screens. And then once we have to actually um, everything is finalized that we can now use the new API everywhere, we'll just replace the method names. And you might be saying, okay, there is no overhead, right? I mean, that's why we are being paid. But sometimes you should work smart, right? Not try to do everything by your own. So this is where you Angular can help you. So I'll create a new service. So I'll say, okay, this is npm run, and I'll say nggs, and I'll call it as new shared service. Okay, so now this new shared service is available. What I will do is I will just go ahead and say I will implement add method here, and here I'll extend the shared service. Okay, and I will add create new method. Okay, no, it's not required, I think. Yeah, this is not required. So I'll just implement add method here. So I'll say, okay, this is num1, num1, which is type of number, though I'm doing the same thing, but num2, number 2. Okay, block. So this is num2, and this is also type of number, and let's say, and I'll just do the same thing, return fun plus num2, and I'll just add 10 extra just to see if we are getting output from this particular method, right? So now what I've done is I have created a new service which is called new shared service, and I have implemented add method, which is, let's say, which is implementing the new API which we have. Now I'll go to shared service. I'll come here and I will say use class and give the new shared service here. So I'll say, okay, new shared service. Okay, somehow this auto imports from /, and we have this new shared service. Also, okay, this is new shared service. Now let's see what happens. So we already have implemented add method right here. So let's add number. You can see the output is 20 now, but what is the input? So input is actually 5 plus 5. So it should be 10, but now actually it is calling the new method which is provided by us. So it is actually calling new service. So I'll just add a breakpoint here so we can see. So see app, I'll go to new shared service.ts, add a breakpoint here. You can see now it is coming to this, but did we call new shared service? The answer is no. So how it got resolved? So here the way it got resolved is actually once your services are initialized, it said, okay, rather than shared service, actually you have to use a class called new shared service. But right now it contains the method or implementation for add method. So it will take add method from here and subtract from here because it's not available inside shared service, new shared service. So this is how you can actually plan your migration for future. Now let's say now you have completed your migration. Now you want to remove the older service, which is shared service, from everywhere, right? So now there is again an overhead. So you have to actually go ahead and delete, remove the shared service from everywhere and use new shared service. But what if I say you don't have to do even that? So what you can do is you can just silently remove the shared service by using use existing. Okay, so now you can say, okay, rather than creating using shared service, just go ahead and say use the new shared service which is already available. Otherwise, what will happen is you will end up with two instances of shared service. Let's say in new screens you are using new shared services, and older screens uses shared service. Now in older screens you want to use shared service, a new shared service. So what you have to do is you have to just go ahead and change everywhere that you want to use new shared service. Rather than that, you can just say, okay, use existing, and that's it. That's the only line of code you have to change. Now whenever someone tries to use shared service, they will get an instance of new shared service. Let's see if that's true. So I'll just add this inside the constructor, and I'll say new shared instance is created. And let's go to console.log. So you can see new shared instance is created. New, who is this? Shared service. Okay, shared service of course exists. So I'll go to employee, department, product, and new instance is created. What is that? So new shared instance, use existing. Let's save it again, because everyone should get new shared instance. Why is this getting called? Use existing, new shared service. Okay, too strange. Am I missing something? So for this, new shared instance is created, and this is new instance is created by just let's see, extends shared service, just called super, and let's see. Okay, this will cause circular dependency, of course, so I cannot. New component.ts, this is shared. Okay, this is okay because we are using self. Okay, that's my fault. So here we are using self, so it won't be able to create a new service because we are using this. This is a shorthand syntax which we are using here, so it won't be able to use it. In case you want to provide the new service here as well, we can change this to actually a syntax like this. So we'll say this is provide shared service, and then use class, use existing, and I can say this is new shared service. Now you will see, okay, this in both the places you will say, okay, this is the product, this is product component, right? So it will also create a new shared instance. 1 second, let's refresh it again. Fi console and product. Okay, because it is using the global instance because this new shared instance is already created, so it will not create its own instance again now. So it is using the existing instance which is available. So this is how your use existing works. You don't have to do everything until unless you are not using this shorthand syntax which we had earlier, something like this. So this was the shorthand syntax, right? So if you're using this, you have to change it back to the provide and this use class syntax, otherwise it will be taken care of. So this is how you can use class and use existing. I have few more minutes, so I'll just show you one example of using the tokens. So we also spoke about two types of services, right? So we said there is something known as class providers, and then there are something known as value providers and factory providers. So let's see value providers. I think I will not have time for factory providers, but let's complete value providers. So while working with front end, there will be times that you may want to use some static values, right? So here we have environment.ts and environment.prod.ts. This is something which is provided by Angular. So in case you have some configuration which should be available at which should be changed during production build or development build, you can provide it here. So here I'll just add some, let's say I have API endpoint as a one property, right? So we have, this is abc.com, and we also have, let's say, AWS endpoint. So this is, let's say for AWS we have different APIs, and so I'll say this is xyz.com. But this values will actually differ once I build in production mode, because of course your production endpoint can be anything, something else, right? So I'll say this is xyz, abc, c. Okay. Now, of course, you cannot hard code these values. And the other way actually to use this environment variable is something like this. So I can just go to app component.ts. Let's say I want to use environment variable here. So I have to always say this import from // environments / environment. So something like this. So right. So you have to always go ahead and import directly from environment, which is not convenient, right? Of course, if I see the folder structure, I am at level 0 maybe. If I go to product component.ts, I have to say // and it will increase as soon as my child components or the number of components which goes into deeper into the folder. So what we can do in such cases, so we can create something known as injection tokens, which are available, or we also call it as value providers. So to do that, what I will do is I will create an interface first. So I'll say this is my config.ts. So this will be interface which will have the signature which which can hold the values which is provided by environment.ts. So here I'll say export interface. I'll say this is config. And then of course I will refer it from here. So I'll leave this production. I don't require that value. In case you need, you can actually create a property for that as well. And this is string, both are string. And next I will create a config service, config.service.ts. And here we will create const, I'll just call it as app config equals to new injection token. So which is available inside Angular. So new injection token, and here you will provide the type. So injection token needs to be imported from Angular core. So sorry, injection token. Yeah. So I need injection token here. Now here I'll say, okay, this will be type of config, the interface which we already have. And then you can also give your token a name. So this is, let's say I'll say this is our app config. This is my token name. And next I have to create app values. Now this is where I will provide the values, which will be type of course, my config interface equals to, I have to provide API endpoint, and I have to provide, yeah, AWS. Okay, somehow I'm saying AWC. Okay, AWS config AWS, and let's see if it is correct here. Yeah, here also it is incorrect. AWS. Okay, so now this token is available. I have to provide the values. Now values are also already available in environment, so I'll import it once. So I'll say, okay, this is import from // dot slash environments slash environment, and we need the environment from here. And now I can just use the values environment dot. So this is API endpoint, and this is environment dot AWS endpoint. Okay, so this is a service, and this is the value which we are going to use as a service. So let's see how to do that. And we don't have to import environment everywhere now in this case. The first thing which we have to do is we have to register this particular service. And to register that, I'll go to app module, because this particular service is going to be used across. So I don't care. I don't care about the number of instances. I want a single instance to be available. So here I'll just go to provide, but I have not exported it. So I have to just say export, and here I'll say this is app app underscore config. Okay, so this is my service. Let's import. This auto imports, they work most of the time, but okay. So this is config service. Okay, and from config service we need two things. We need app config, and we need the app values. And we will register it using this syntax. So here we'll say, okay, this provide is app underscore config, and it provides the value. So you have to say use value, and then you'll say, okay, this is app values. So now my token is registered, and now we can go ahead and use it. So I'll just go to app component.ts, and we know how to inject a service, right? So I'll say this is private. Let's import the service first. So I'll say this is import from dot slash app config service, and this is app config. I don't need values here. So I'm saying this is the service. So I'll say, okay, I know the dependency injection. So I'll say, okay, this is app underscore config. First the instance, right? So I'll say this is app config, which is type of app underscore config. But you can see even the the syntax is not working, right? So even VS Code is not doing anything. It is not giving me IntelliSense. The reason being, I cannot use this const values as a valid services. So what we have to do is we have to use different syntax. So here I'll say this is inject. Okay, and in inject I'll provide my app config, and then I'll say this is private, and this is app config, and it will be type of. You can of course go ahead and say any as of now, but as I already have the interface, I'll say, okay, this particular service will give you the data which is type of this particular interface, which is config. Okay, so I'll say, okay, this is config interface, and here I'll use this type of config. And okay, this is again I capital Angular core. Okay, so now we have this particular service available, and it should give me two values. So I'll just go ahead and say console.log just to show you that's how it works. Console.log. This is app config dot API endpoint. Let's see what we get. And yeah, so let's go ahead and see, verify the output. So here let's refresh. Okay, so you can see abc.com is available here, the API endpoint. Now I can just go ahead and use this API endpoint wherever I want. Even if I have a service from where I'm making an API call, I can just go ahead and say, give me the API endpoint, and I don't have to import this static values from environment everywhere. So I can just use the config, which is already available, and I can use it as a service. So these are valid tokens now. And yep, so this is related tokens. I think yep, we just left one part which was factory. I'm sure I'll share one repository in case you're interested. You can refer that repository where I do have some examples how you use token. And this is the repository. Okay, so yeah, I'm done. I mean, in case you have any questions, you can ask. And I'll also upload this code on GitHub, so you can always refer it.
Thank you, Santosh. Thank you for explaining us all the details about dependency injection in Angular. Feel free to ask your questions if you have anything with Santosh, and you can always reach out to him via Twitter if there are any additional follow-up questions.
Okay, so yeah, sure. So this is my Twitter handle and yeah, my LinkedIn profile as well. So in case you are on LinkedIn, you want to connect, you can always send me a request here.